Hello, everybody. Welcome to the presentation by the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, Newfoundland and Labrador. And the name of presentation is Hearing Conservation 101, Protect Your Hearing at Work and Play. My name is Marta Evstigniev. I am the coordinator of education with CHI-NL, and I will be your presenter today. Let's start with some statistics. I know this is not the most exciting part of the presentation, but it is important to understand why we are even talking about this topic. According to Statistics Canada, 54% of Canadians between the ages of 40 to 79 have at least mild hearing loss. And this number, I'm sure, shocks a lot of people because it is a much higher number than people realize. Hearing loss is much more prevalent in our society, especially among middle-aged and older population. But in fact, World Hearing Organization estimates that over 1 billion young people globally are at risk of hearing loss due to sound exposure in recreational settings, and the risk of permanent hearing injury due to unsafe listening is both avoidable and is also very costly on our society. So we want to prevent it if we can. And this is why we're having this conversation today. So as I said, many more people have hearing loss than most people realize. And the unfortunate thing is that 77% of people with hearing loss don't know they have hearing loss and don't do anything to treat it, because hearing loss is really, really hard to recognize in yourself. We don't know what we're missing when we're missing it. So this is another reason we're talking about hearing loss and hearing conservation. And the last fact I wanted to share with you is that on average, a person, even after they have their hearing loss diagnosed and they know that they have it, they wait for about 7 to 10 years to do something about it, to treat their hearing loss. And that can have devastating side effects on their overall health. And I'll talk about it a little bit later. But first, I want to share a video with you that describes how noise exposure affects our hearing.
Weakening bones, poor eyesight, and hearing loss are all thought to be just a part of getting older. Now, scientists think the cause of hearing loss may be something more than age.
Inside Science.
Most people know someone who has problems hearing, and usually it's someone a little older. For years, scientists have debated what causes age-related hearing loss. Some think it's driven mostly by damage to the stria vascularis, a part of the inner ear that helps transform sound energy into nerve impulses. But other scientists think the main problem is damage to the hair cells inside the ear. Now, new research suggests hair cells really are to blame. Hair cells are known to be damaged by loud noises. That means that age-related hearing could be caused by years of accumulated damage from noise exposure. Hearing loss is difficult to study because most details in the inner ear are impossible to see while someone's alive. For the new study, researchers collected tissue samples from deceased people and examined them under a microscope. The majority of subjects were more than 50 years old when they died, and they showed extensive damage to both hair cells and the stria vascularis. But only the damage to the hair cells was correlated with the ability to hear. The more hearing loss people suffered in later years of life, the more damage researchers saw to their hair cells. Plus, the damage was usually worse in people who were exposed to loud noises in the military or at work. Scientists suspect that everyone will lose their hearing eventually as their stria vascularis degrades. But most people lose their hearing sooner than they need to because hair cells have been damaged by noise. That suggests you can keep your hearing sharp by protecting your ears throughout your life. It also raises hopes for treatments to regrow hair cells.
So as we just heard in this video, noise has a significant impact on our hearing, and constant exposure to high levels of noise do damage inner ear, specifically the hair cells or cilia in our inner ear, and cause sensory neural hearing loss, which unfortunately is permanent and is not really reversible. So it is important to understand that. And with that premise, we're going into the rest of our presentation to talk about how we can protect our hearing. But one last thing I wanted to mention is that hearing loss is really often overlooked because those challenges are invisible. So we overlook it in ourselves, and other people also cannot detect it in you because they can't really see hearing or hearing loss. So that's important to keep in mind. So as I said, your hearing loss impacts other areas of your overall health, and it is not harmless, right? You're not just risking not being able to hear and communicate effectively, but there are other significant side effects that I wanted to talk about. So one of the most shocking and impactful effects is cognitive decline. So it is well documented and scientifically proven that untreated hearing loss is the #1 risk factor for developing dementia and cognitive issues in people. So as you can tell, this is not something that we want to develop, and I definitely know I want to avoid cognitive issues at all cost. And hearing loss, especially undetected and untreated hearing loss, has a significant impact on our cognitive functioning. Another thing that is connected to hearing loss is our mental health. Of course, when people can't hear well and they can't communicate effectively, they withdraw from social situations, they avoid other people, and that leads to serious mental health problems, and especially social isolation, and it can cause depression. And as we all know, our mental health has a big impact on our overall physical health. So the domino effect caused by a hearing loss can be very devastating. Hearing loss is also associated with difficulties with mobility and balance, and people with hearing loss have a much higher risk of falling and injury due to falling because of that. And of course, for younger people, one of the more important impacts is decreased employability and quality of life. If you can't hear well, it impacts all areas of your life. And it is important to try and do our best to protect what we have before we have to treat it. So, first of all, I want to talk about hearing protection at work. If you're working in a noisy environment, like a construction site or a carpentry workshop or something like this, over time, exposure to that workplace noise can lead to permanent hearing damage. And high-risk environments is something that is described as jobs or workplaces that involve power tools, machinery, and vehicles that produce dangerously high noise levels. And a lot of people probably see that picture and think of this as I said, as jobs that involve the use of power tools, construction, explosions, things like this. But sometimes some jobs that might seem innocuous to you can be just as devastating to your hearing in the long run. For example, being a hairdresser and using a hairdryer over a period of time when you're exposed to that noise day in and day out, that can really affect your hearing. And have you ever seen a hairdresser who is using a hearing protection? I haven't. So if that is your line of work, it is important for you to assess and just think about how much noise you're exposed on a daily basis, exposed to. So protecting your hearing now is crucial to prevent long-term irreversible hearing loss. And this is why I'm putting this information out there, and we're trying to warn you and raise awareness on how important it is to protect our hearing. So to understand noise exposure, we need to understand noise first. So sound or noise intensity is measured in decibels. It's usually written as dB, and there are different levels of noise or sound that we can perceive as humans. So a whisper would be about 30 decibel, and the relatively quiet room is about 40 decibel. A regular human conversation, if nobody's shouting or being loud, is at about 60 decibel, and your household vacuum cleaner is at about 70 decibel. So all those sounds are safe sounds that we can listen to for an extended period of time, and it doesn't damage our hearing. And those sounds are below 85 decibels. Right? We get into the danger zone, which is indicated by orange to red color, at above 85 decibel over time. Right? And there are some noises that are so loud that they cause immediate hearing damage. Those are the noises about 140 decibel, like a blast, gun blast, or an explosion. It can immediately damage your hearing. But for sounds in those yellow to red zones, it is important not only how loud they are, but how long are we exposed to them, right? So a sound of city traffic at 80 decibel is safe for 8 hours a day, usually. But if you're exposed to it for 12 hours a day, it becomes dangerous, right? A hairdryer, as I mentioned in my previous example, is about 90 decibel. So it is safe for a person for about 2 hours. But after 2 hours, it does become a hazard. So it is important how much time you spend in that noise, right? Not just how loud it is. And as you can see, a lawnmower, for example, at 110 decibel is only safe for about 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. And it takes usually much longer to mow a lawn. So if a student has a summer business mowing lawns for their neighbors, and they do it day in and day out and don't use hearing protection, that summer job can really have a major impact on that young person's life, and damage their hearing permanently. And that is why it is important to realize that, it is important to protect our hearing. And I'll talk about how we can do it later in this presentation. So as you can see, the louder this noise gets, the less time you can safely spend in that noise without damaging your hearing. And that time gets reduced dramatically the louder it's getting, the louder the noise is getting, right? And this graph shows how noise affects our hearing over time. So a very slight increase in the noise level, an increase of 3 decibel, actually halves the time you can safely spend in that environment. So the difference is not, it's a logarithmic scale, right? It is not proportional to how much louder the noise is. So at 82 decibel, we can spend 16 hours in that level of noise without any risk to our hearing. But at 85 decibel, that time is halved, and it's only 8 hours that we can tolerate that noise. And at 88, it's half again, so it's only 4 hours, right? And every 3 decibel, as I said, reduces that number by half. And it is a very significant risk. How do we know how loud the environment is? So one simple way that we tell you can understand that the environment is too noisy is if you are 3 feet away from somebody and you have to raise your voice, you have to shout for them to hear you, the noise is above 85 decibel. So sometimes even a bar, a club, a noisy restaurant can be louder than 85 decibel, and potentially spending a lot of time in that environment, if you're a waiter, for example, or a bartender, can be dangerous to your hearing. So as I said, sometimes environments that we don't realize are hazardous can be so if we spend enough time in them. So what can we do to protect ourselves? What can we do to protect our hearing? Of course, there are different types of hearing protection that we can wear that help us, protect our ears and our brain from that noise. So the most common types are earmuffs, earplugs, and I'll talk a little bit about ear caps. So earmuffs is something that people usually think about when you think noise protection, because this is something most commonly used at job sites, when you're on a shooting range or in any noisy environment to protect people from hearing loss. So they cover the entire ear and offer higher levels of protection, especially in very loud environments. And they are great for high noise machinery or prolonged exposure to noise, right? This is something, as I said, we see most commonly. But it is important to know how to properly use the earmuffs and how to wear them so they provide the optimal protection. So another common form of hearing protection is earplugs. And actually, earplugs can be as effective as earmuffs and sometimes even more effective than earmuffs, but only if worn properly and inserted correctly. They're very small, lightweight, and effective for most noise levels. They're also much cheaper, of course, than earmuffs. But if you're using it all the time and you're disposing of them and getting a new pair over time, it might not be as cost effective. They're easy to carry around and use, and they're ideal for tasks with moderate noise level. So ear caps, they kind of look like earplugs on a headband, and they cover your ears, but they don't go into the ear canal and they don't fit in there snugly. They only block the sound a little bit. They only cover your ear canal without sealing it off effectively. It is only suitable for occasional use and in not very high levels of noise. And they're not as protective as earplugs or earmuffs. So I would urge you to explore the other two options over ear caps. So when you use hearing protection, all those devices are not created equal, right? And usually when you get a pair of earmuffs or a pair of earplugs, they have this little label on them with a number. And I want to talk to you about noise reduction rating, that number, and what it actually means. So this noise reduction rating is measured in decibel, right? Same as the sound level. And the number shown shows by how many decibels that form of protection reduces the overall noise. It is usually found on the earmuff or earplug package, and the higher that number is, the greater the protection you are getting. It should be easy as that, but unfortunately, as with many things in life, it is not. So that number, in our example here, it shows 33. So that number shows the maximum level of protection that form of hearing protection provides in ideal laboratory settings, which of course does not reflect most environments we function in as humans. Work environments, leisure environments. We don't live and we don't lead our lives in a lab. So, as you might guess, the number does not accurately represent the number of decibel the noise is reduced when you use it in the real life environments. And to calculate how much actual protection you're getting, we have a little nifty formula. So you take that NRR number, subtract 7 from it, and divide that divide the result by 2. And then you're getting at approximate protection that you actually that is actually realistic, right? So for this example on the label, 33 decibel NRR rating, we would subtract 7 and divide it by 2, and we're actually getting a much smaller number. Only 13 decibel is if you are inserting it more or less correctly and using it appropriately. So you're getting from that form of protection only 13 decibel noise reduction. I'm saying only because 13 is definitely much smaller number than the 33. But remember how I told you every 3 decibel halves the time you can spend in that noisy environment. So every 3 decibel reduction doubles the time that you might spend in that environment. So of course, with 13 decibel, you're actually getting quite a significant level of protection from the noise, right? And 33 is actually the highest NRR, or noise reduction rating, for in-ear protection or earplugs. So the actual protection you would be getting with a 33 NRR is 13 decibel or so. And the highest level, the highest NRR for on-ear protection or earmuffs is about 31. So up to actual protection of 12 decibel reduction, right? So this is something that is important to understand. But generally, the higher the number, the higher that NRR number, the more protection you are getting. Well, and in some situations, people actually use both, or they use double the protection, right? Some work sites or some situations can be so loud, or you're spending so much time in them, that neither form of protection provides significant levels, right, of noise reduction. So you might see a sign, like you see on my slide, that says that double hearing protection is required in that area. And that would mean that you need earplugs and earmuffs on top. And doubling that protection provides the highest level of protection and increases that NRR from 4 to 8 decibel, right? Which, again, we know that 3 decibel reduction doubles the time that you can spend in that environment. So you might double, triple, or even almost quadruple the time that you can safely spend in that very, very loud environment if you double up the protection. So next topic I wanted to talk about is, of course, like with everything, to get the most out of your hearing protection, you have to use it appropriately and you have to use it properly. And there are some things to mention and to keep in mind. So you see that young man in my slide, when he's wearing his hearing protection around his neck, like he's doing, that is not doing him much good. In fact, it doesn't do him any good. So you have to wear your hearing protection, not just have it somewhere, and you have to wear it properly. So fit and seal is the first thing you have to be mindful of. You have to ensure that your earplugs are inserted fully for a proper seal, and earmuffs are adjusted to fit snugly over the ears. A poor fit reduces effectiveness of your protection. So with earmuffs, it is important that nothing interferes with the fit. So if you're wearing glasses, for example, that might actually interfere with the fit of your earmuffs. And you need to make sure that your earmuffs really can fit safely over your glasses. And there are no gaps and no creasing or anything like this created by your glasses or anything else that you're wearing, right? Wearing earmuffs over the hard hat when they're not designed to be used that way will deem them ineffective. So it is important to make sure that your hearing protection fits well, is fully functioning, and is used appropriately. And it is also important to maintain your hearing protection properly, right? So when you get it out of the package, it is optimal, best condition, and it protects you the best. But with time, it might get worn out or it might get less effective. So it is important to clean or replace your earplugs regularly and inspect earmuffs for wear and tear. Damage protection does not offer full safety, so keep that in mind. It's important to use any type of hearing protection appropriately. You need to choose the right protection based on the noise level of your tasks. So mind that NRR rating, right? NRR number. Wearing hearing protection properly is essential for it to work effectively. I can't stress it enough. So keep that in mind. And the most important part is the most effective hearing protection. I often get asked, what is better? Would it be better for me to wear earplugs or would it be better for me to wear earplugs? Oftentimes, whatever you can stick with and really wear all the time, whatever is the most comfortable to you, whatever makes the most sense, whatever is worn most consistently is going to be the best level, is going to offer the best level of protection, because for your equipment to work, you have to wear it, right? So whatever you like best, whatever you can stick with, is what's best for you. And you are the one who have to determine what it is. So here we have another video. I am gonna show it to you now. It explains how to insert the foam earplugs correctly.
How to use formable earplugs. Sounds can be harmful when they're loud and last for a while. The louder the sound, the quicker it can damage your hearing. The good news is you can use hearing protectors to keep your hearing healthy. These are formable earplugs. Formable earplugs are typically made of soft foam, are disposable, don't cost much, and are available in a variety of stores. For proper use, they will be inserted into the ear one at a time and one per ear. First, be sure your hands are clean. Then, roll the earplug up into a small, thin snake with your fingers. Use gentle pressure to roll the earplug, and then gradually increase pressure. You want to avoid making creases, which create tunnels that let in sound. Pull the top of your ear up and back with your opposite hand. This straightens out your ear canal so that the earplug is easier to insert. Continue to roll the earplug and gently slide the earplug into your ear canal so that it is flush with the opening of your ear. Insertion of the earplug should not hurt. If there is discomfort or pain, stop attempts at insertion. Gently hold the earplug in place with your finger. Count to 20 or 30 while the plug expands. Your voice should sound different to you, possibly louder and or muffled, when the plug makes a good seal. Check the fit to make sure your earplugs are comfortable and properly inserted. If it starts to expand out of your ear, it probably isn't inserted correctly. If this happens, take the earplug out and try again. Have a buddy look and see if you have inserted the earplug properly. Or use a mirror to check the fit. To remove the earplug, slowly twist or rock it to break the seal with the ear canal, and then pull it out of your ear. The best hearing protection is the type you are most comfortable wearing. There are many types to choose from.
So, as the video said, it is important to insert the earplugs correctly. And to do so with foam earplugs, you need to roll them and into like a small little snake and insert it completely into your ear canal and wait about 20 to 30 seconds for the foam to expand. And you should notice a significant difference in how you perceive sound. So when you are talking, when you're hearing other noise, it should sound different to you. And the earplug shouldn't protrude out from the ear. It shouldn't come out, right? And when you remove it, you almost get like a little pop because the seal should be so tight that it should offer a little resistance when you're removing it. So it is important to keep that in mind. So this slide is about working together for hearing safety, right? You have to be your own advocate at the job site. Usually employers should be aware of the noise levels. There should be signs where the hearing protection should be worn. There should be hearing protection provided, and the safe noise levels should be enforced. But unfortunately, this is not always the case. So if you notice high noise levels at your work, and lack of hearing protection, you should speak up about it. Be your own advocate and stand up for your own hearing and listening needs, right? You need to let your supervisor or your management know that you are concerned about the noise levels. And safety starts with awareness. You can share this presentation with your employer to let them know why it is you are concerned, right? So, as I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure there are noise meters that you can use to measure the noise, right? And you might ask yourself, so how am I going to get a hold of one? Nowadays, if you have a smartphone, you can get a noise meter at the App Store. There are a lot of apps that measure the noise levels, and they can warn you if the noise level is too loud, right? And some of them work in the background and can even alert you if you're in the environment where the noise is too high. So a lot of those apps are free. So just search the App Store for either Android or Apple devices for noise meters. And I would urge you to have that available and to use it, especially if your job does involve some noise. It is important to take personal responsibility, right? Your employer can only do so much. They can put up signs, they can provide hearing protection, but if you are not wearing it consistently, if you're not wearing it properly, and if it's not part of your daily routine, like wearing safety glasses or gloves at your job, your hearing is not going to be protected. So please be responsible and please do what you can to protect your own ears. Another thing you can do, and is important to do, is to get hearing assessments regularly. It is essential for your early detection and treatment of hearing loss. And early intervention can help maintain hearing health and prevent further damage, right? And if your job does not provide hearing assessments as part of the wellness, health and wellness package, it is important to, again, take responsibility and to schedule your own hearing assessments. So, even if you don't think you have hearing loss, it is important to have the baseline, right? If you are starting a job somewhere where you are exposed to high noise levels, if you don't know what your hearing was like before you started, or at the beginning of your working there, you really can't know if your hearing got any worse over time, right? So it is important to get that baseline and get your hearing checked out if you're exposed to noise. In Newfoundland and Labrador Eastern region, with Eastern Health, you don't need a referral from a medical professional to schedule a hearing assessment with Eastern Health. You can send in a self-referral, and if you need help with that, please contact us and we can let you know how to do that. But it can take a little while, right? The waiting lists with audiologists are really long. So you can also go into a private clinic or a private hearing aid center, and a lot of them provide free hearing assessments as part of their package. So you can also go that route. And another option we can offer is here at Chanel in our office at 1081 Topsail Road in Mount Pearl. We do offer free hearing screenings. Now, that is not a full hearing assessment. You're not going to get your audiogram, and we're not looking in your ears, and we're not medical professionals, so we don't do those things. But we do check your hearing at the border between normal hearing and mild hearing loss. So we can tell you if your hearing is normal or if there is a concern and you should look into it. And if you have any questions or concerns about hearing at all, this is a good opportunity to come talk to us and get a consultation and some information. Right? So protecting your hearing is a lifelong commitment to your overall health and well-being. So you should take charge and make sure that your hearing is protected. So we have been talking about noise exposure at work, which is a serious concern for a lot of people if you work in noisy environments. But it's not the only concern. A lot of us are exposed to noise outside of work, doing things that we do for fun or doing things around the house. And actually, as I mentioned in the beginning, World Health Organization raises a concern that over a billion of young people can potentially be at risk of developing hearing loss because of low levels of awareness of how noise and listening to music and engaging in a lot of leisure activities that can be harmful to your hearing, what that can do to your hearing health. So, and as you can see on the poster that I'm sharing, nearly half of teens are showing potential signs of hearing loss nowadays. And that can include ringing, roaring, buzzing in their ears, some pain. Sometimes they describe that they have difficulty understanding when people are talking in noisy environments, so in noise at a distance and so on. And it is a serious concern because as we heard in the first video, with age, we all develop some level of hearing loss. But usually young people, don't have that level of noise exposure to develop sensory neural hearing loss. But nowadays, especially with the advance of technology and with a lot of people using audio technology like headphones and earbuds, AirPods, and so on a daily basis over extended periods of times, that is a risky habit that can affect hearing. And according to the poster that I'm sharing, nearly 9 in 10 teenagers, about 88%, engage in at least one risky behavior, right? Like listening to loud music with earphones, using mowers and other loud tools without hearing protection, or using noisy powered toys and gaming, with headphones. Sometimes in games, there are such high levels of noise that it can be as risky, if not more risky, than the work site. And people don't realize that it might be damaging their hearing. So I want to share a video with you that explains what I just talked about and how leisure noise can harm your hearing.
Noisy leisure activities can cause both tinnitus and hearing loss. We normally enjoy our leisure activities, but some leisure activities can harm our hearing. If you go to fitness centers, taking spinning classes, attend Zumba or body pump lessons, you put your hearing at risk. The music in fitness centers is often far too loud. Motorcycles, jet skis and race cars can be very noisy experiences. Going to a loud concert or a nightclub may also cause hearing loss or give you tinnitus. If you enjoy shooting or hunting, you should think about protecting your ears. Even playing golf can harm your hearing. The sound of the club hitting the ball is short, but quite high. But worst of all is if you listen to loud music using the small headphones which sit in your ear. The best way to protect your ears and your hearing when enjoying noisy leisure activities is to wear hearing protection. And when you use headphones that sit on the ear, not in the ear, and turn down the volume.
So, as the video just told us, it is important to be mindful of noise when we are having fun, not just working, right? And a lot of activities we don't associate with high levels of noise can be very noisy, like going to a rock concert, or even to the gym or playing golf, things that we all do on a daily basis and we don't really think about it. But especially, as I said, wearing headphones and especially earbuds and AirPods can be really, really harmful to your hearing if you listen to loud noises or audiobooks or whatever you do that you do in your headphones for extended periods of times, which a lot of people do. So it's important to take listening breaks, not listening to those sounds for extended periods of times. And it's important to utilize your device's safety features. Nowadays, both Android and Apple devices have accessibility features and safety features included that limit the sound level. You can put it by default that the sound level doesn't go above 60% of the maximum capacity, and that will definitely help protect your hearing, right? And generally speaking, if you are listening to music in your headphones and somebody next to you can hear the music and dance to it or sing along, that means the sound is way too loud. And we oftentimes don't realize it. So it's important to turn down the volume. And if your headphones offer, say, noise reduction or noise blocking, it is better to use that feature rather than cranking up the sound so high that you can hear whatever you're listening to in noise, right? So be mindful of that. The video also talked about tinnitus, or sometimes also pronounced tinnitus. Both pronunciations are correct and accepted. And that is the perception of a noise that has no external source. You hear the sound in your ear, but it is actually produced in your brain. And it is considered to be a sign of potential hearing loss or existing hearing loss. It is pretty common. It affects about 1 in 5 individuals or 20% of population. And people with sensory neural hearing loss, which is the type of hearing loss that is caused by noise exposure, other factors too, but noise causes this type of hearing loss. 80% of those people have tinnitus as well. So, and especially if your hearing loss is noise related, tinnitus is very, very common in people who have that type of hearing loss. So for some people, well, you hear some sound, there's some whooshing or some whooping in your ears, and it can be a little annoying, but a lot of people are not really bothered by it. But about 20% of people can really, really feel the effect of it to the point where it can cause serious mental health issues, right? Some people are really bothered by it. They cannot function, they cannot sleep. It affects their daily life to the point where some people can even be suicidal. So it's definitely not something you want to develop. And although there are different types of treatment, it is, if you do have tinnitus, there are things that can help you. Like, for example, getting hearing aids, if you do have hearing loss, can sometimes alleviate tinnitus to some extent. Masking is another one when people use sounds like white noise, background sounds to help with their tinnitus. Habituation therapy is something that works at you getting used to that sound and probably ignoring it, so to say. Like, it's easier said than done, but that's what habituation means. You just get used to that noise and living with it. One of the most famous and effective therapies is called tinnitus retraining therapy, or TRT. And we do have information on that. And if you check out other webinars and videos that we have on the topic of tinnitus and Meniere's disease, you can learn more about it there. So meditation and relaxation has been shown to be effective for tinnitus, as well as special equipment and, again, phone apps. There are a lot of apps that can help with that. So if you want to know more about those treatment options, you can reach out to us for more information or scan that QR code that you see on the screen. So there are treatment options, but if your tinnitus is significant, oftentimes it is not really curable. So there is no known cure to tinnitus. Sometimes it does go away on its own. But oftentimes you're kind of stuck with it, and the best you can do is just learn to live with it and ignore it. But it can, as I said, be very annoying and very bothersome. So if you do not have it, it is a good idea to avoid it and to not develop it. So this brings us to the end of today's presentation. I just wanted to reiterate that if you have any questions on the topics that I talked about today, or on any other hearing-related topics, please reach out to us. You can call us, text, email, or visit our website. You can also follow us and like us on different types of social media. We have an active Facebook page. And we have this YouTube channel where you can find a lot of useful information. And if you don't mind, the QR code on the screen will lead you to an evaluation survey. We do value your feedback and appreciate every person who fills it out. It helps us a lot. And everybody who fills it out is entered into a draw to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So please, if you would take a minute, it only takes a minute or two, and fill it out. We would really appreciate it. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.